We don't do a lot of reviews on AIOs around here because it's kind of like, all right, they're almost all Asetek rebrands and it is what it is. What is there to talk about? Well, it takes something kind of unique from a brand that makes us kind of raise an eyebrow to go, you're making an AIO? So today we're going to check out the Inky 360 from G-Skill.
We interrupt this video to bring you a special message from iFixit. No, we interrupt this interruption with this interruption about new stuff from iFixit. Wish you had a new graphics card, but inventory sucks? Fix the inventory problems with iFixit. Whoa, don't drop it. Can't fix that with iFixit. Just kidding, yes you can. Wish you could take iFixit with you anywhere, but your pockets aren't big enough? Introducing the new Moray
and the new Minnow.
Take them with you anywhere. So get iFixit for your loved one, or just get them for yourself.
Typical noise warning though, it's a very windy day and our roll-up door over there is making sounds and I can't do anything about it. But what I can do is open this up. So, all right, AIOs stands for an all-in-one, AIO, all-in-one liquid cooler. They are more common than they've ever been. They're more inexpensive than they've ever been. That's because there's so many brands on the market and so many different versions and stuff. Typically what we look for is just how each brand differentiates that OEM rebrand and then what they add to it. So if you're not aware, and I'm only talking about the OEM so you can understand like what's actually different when we talk about a brand that's not being basically rebranded and under license through the OEM, which is typically in the case Asetek. So the design of the cold plate and the pump is typically what is under the patent. And then anything on top of that, the way the water enters the pump, if you put a screen on there or blinky lights or a circle like NZXT has done, or you throw an OLED screen in there like NZXT has also done, and Asus and all that, that's all free game. You can do whatever you want. The patent is specific to the cold plate and pump design and the shape of it and all of that. Well, G-Skill is very much like, hey, we are not doing the same OEM, we're not using the same OEM that everyone else is. And so they look at this as being a completely different design and approach to the way a lot of people have done it. And again, that way that they've done it in the past has always been to just contact Asetek, apply for the license. It's licensed when someone else owns the patent, and then put their own touch on it. So this is the 360. Obviously that means we have three 120 millimeter fans for a total of 360 millimeters of radiator length. It's probably gonna be 30 millimeters worth of girth. And you can see already by just looking at the pump, it's clearly not similar to how the Asetek design is. It's advertising here that it has a high fin density, so that just was referring to how close together are the fins in the radiator, because having more fins means more surface area means more thermal capacity to hold heat, and then obviously the fans to blow that heat away from the heat exchanger. So if we go and open this up, my first thoughts on this too is it's pretty light. Like it feels lighter than other AIO boxes. Here's your quick start guide. Curious about the fans. Let's look at the fan design first, because this is where a lot of times you can have a great design just ruined by poor fan optimization. So first things first, you can see we have what in my opinion seems to be a middle ground between a high static pressure fan and an airflow fan. High static pressure fans tend to have an overlap between the fins on the blades. And so what that does is allows there to be no room for splashback or air that's being resisted, in this case the radiator giving resistance as it goes through, to go back the way it came. If they overlap, it has no choice but to go forward. The problem with the overlap like that though, is it really limits the amount of air that can be scooped. So my initial thought on this is it does look like it is definitely an in-betweener. The other thing is, if we look at the back and the cage design, you can see we have it sort of spiraling in the same direction that the fan blades turn. So this is the way the blade turns. You can see that it's swooped, kind of like a pinwheel, in the same shape. But what you may not be able to see, if you kind of look down in there through there, I guess, is they are peaked. So the triangular kind of shape, which allows the air as it goes over that to smooth out. Because what tends to happen with fans here is they always come off in a cone shape. This, I feel like, is gonna sort of redirect it back to being straight airflow, which will help with the static pressure. They're advertised as being 500 to 2100 RPM. So that means they're gonna give you quite a range for either noise optimization and or cooling performance. I don't know what kind of bearing they are though. They don't actually say on here. We'll put an annotation here on the screen as to what kind of bearing they are, because that matters. I can tell you right now, Oh, wow. The amount of air that actually moves off those blades. Phil, bring your hand over here. Look, I'm just spinning it by hand, right?
Oh, wow.
That's a good amount of air coming off there, huh?
Nice.
So obviously, whether or not I can push through all those fins is what's gonna matter. We've got rubberized isolators here between the mounts on both sides. So when you mount this to your radiator and you mount it to your case, it is going to also give you a little bit of vibration dampening. That way you're not hearing vibration make its way through the chassis. They are PWM, which means they are 4-pin, which means that they are going to be able to be intelligently controlled. Let's get to the best part here though, which is the radiator, which to me already looks different than the standard OEMs you would find in like a Asetek. Wow, the pump's actually kind of small. Is that smaller than you thought it would be, Phil? Like to me, that... I'm kind of surprised at how small the pump is, but I'm kind of happy that it's small because one of the problems that we found with a lot of the other AIOs on the market is they go with a big design on top, whether it be a screen or a ring or whatever, which then starts to interfere with certain RAM kits. You start to have the tubing coming off the side, interfering with high height RAM or just not enough room between the socket and the RAM stick next to it. So that's kind of nice to see that it looks like we're not going to have any issues there in terms of mounting it. Then, last but not least, we have all of our accessories. This is going to be all of our different mounting brackets, hold down retentions. You've got your TR4 set, which I'll be honest with you, this is too small for TR4. I would not recommend using this for that. The die is like twice the size of this. So here's what we're gonna, hey, look, at least they give you more paste. Because they know idiots like me. So at least I can use the paste they sent with it. So when we do our cooling test, it's not like a flawed test because we applied our own paste. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and get this mounted up on our 10900K, which is kind of funny because we choose Intel now since it is the higher heat generator versus AMD. Man, how times have changed. We'll get this cooler off of here. We'll get this one on there and then we'll see, we'll stress it. Stress test it. So you can see how small the block top is. So you have plenty of room there without it being like hitting neighboring components. There's been times where I've had AIOs get way too close to either the heatsink right here on the top or the tubes would hit the RAM or something. So we're gonna go ahead and fire it up. The nice thing too, I already showed you guys is, or maybe I didn't, it doesn't require any special software. It just runs off of a PWM 4-pin, like a regular fan header, and then the RGB just runs off a regular ARGB plug, which is the 3 pins. It's got the 2, the space, and then the 1. So I plug that into the motherboard, and then I also plug the AIO into the AIO header on the motherboard, which will give us control in BIOS. We've got our overclock applied as well. This is the AI overclock. It's got a 43% overclock based on base clock, so it's gonna push it to like CPU fan error. All right, so they are all turning now. I just use a triple fan splitter to plug them into the CPU header. You can see that our initial temperatures right here. Wow, 22C, 23C. It's been sitting off. Obviously the coolant's nice and cold. I need to turn off my CPU monitor though because it's not recognizing the fan signal for some reason. Also, it lit up like a teal color like that because that's the way I had it's using the Aura setting. And so because of that, that's the color it lit up. Otherwise it would probably start up rainbow puke like the RAM is because that's like the default setting, right? So let's get into Windows here. Let's start getting some temperature testing here. But I'm really pleased in that the setup is simple. The bracketry is, it's got more pieces to it, I think, than you would find something like a basic Asetek design. You have to like assemble the bracket part underneath and put the prongs through and then the O-rings to like hold it down. They're pressure fit with O-rings so they don't fall out. Push it up through and then put these spacers down and then the bracket and then nuts to hold it. So there's lots of pieces to the bracketry, which I think could be simplified, but it seems to be holding pretty good. We clearly are getting a good mount. Core temps are anywhere between high 20s to low 30s, spiking into the 50s because things are currently loading and such right now. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to start Cinebench R20. I don't have 23 installed on this one, I don't think. And I'm gonna set this to just loop. And the nice thing about our overclock is I don't have I can't remember exactly what the terminology is, but the turbo timer enabled where after so many seconds it'll drop the core boost, turbo boost, that way it doesn't get as hot. So we're just gonna let it loop after, I don't know, 15 minutes or so to see where our max temperature sort of stabilize. And it's important to remember in this particular test that, we'll go like 900 seconds. It's important to remember that in this particular test, the Cinebench instruction set is very, very demanding. It is like a burn-in test, to know the truth. In the way that the instructions are, which is AVX, specific to, Intel obviously it has instruction sets available to it, so it'll keep the clocks up there. It won't drop them under AVX load, which means we're seeing a fairly unrealistic amount of load on the CPU versus your daily task. So we are seeing the worst case scenario here. So I'm gonna go ahead and start it now. I'm gonna let it loop. And I wanna see what our initial temperature spikes are. 63 on the package. It looks like our average is gonna be like 62 on the cores right now. And if you look at our core speed, it is at 5.9 all core. One of the things with the AI overclock with ASUS handling it is it does,
5.9?
Did I say 5.9?
Yeah, you did say 5.9.
4.9, which typically the all core is like 4.8. It only added like 100 megahertz, but that's because I don't apply an all core overclock to the CPU. I do let it turbo boost, so we get higher single core, where to go like 5.3, even 5.4, and then 4.9 on all core with, workloads, if you will. So the fact that I've been sitting here kind of talking for a second for you, temperatures on the package is 65, and then it looks like we've hit a high of 66 on like a few of the middle cores and an average of 64, 63. It's funny, it looks like the center is hottest and then like the cores on the outside are cooler, which is kind of the way it works, right? All right, we'll let it go. We'll come back and we'll see what those temperatures maxed out at. Ignore the scores if you own a 10900K, unless you want to be really depressed about how low it scores versus AMD's like 5900X and stuff. But anyway, moving on. When it comes to the temperatures though, you can see our max package temp was 71. And then our hottest core reached 72. This doesn't maintain an average, so these are spikes, right? And that's the hottest that it ever spiked, which means its averages are obviously lower than this. It's kind of funny too, if we go down here and we look at the clock speed though, you can see right now all the cores are idling at anywhere between 4.9 to 5.3 even on all core. And that's just because this particular test, like I said, does drop down to about 4.9 during the test. So it's, in my opinion, I feel like this cooler is doing a better job than even our 280 cooler was doing, because one of the things I noticed with these exact settings, if I were playing a game or something, then the fans would immediately like start ramping up, and I feel like there were all kinds of like temperature spikes happening, really high ones. But if we think about the fact that this particular CPU has a TJ max, or thermal junction max, of 105C, and our cores are nearly 40C under that, 35 to 40C under that, and our package temp is 34C under that, with still an AI overclock happening here and not even touching voltages or tuning any of that, you can see that with an AIO like this, on a hot CPU like a 10900K, being in my opinion one of the worst case CPUs for mainstream that you could test this with in terms of power draw and heat soak, the 360 here with these particular fans, which by the way, in terms of tone, they are running full speed right now. They don't have a bad tone about them. They are a hydro bearing, which is something I said earlier, I wasn't sure what kind of bearing type it is. It's a hydro bearing, so that basically means it's a fluid dynamic bearing, essentially is what a hydro bearing is. It means it's riding on a cushion of fluid, which means then the orientation which you have them can matter in terms of the longevity over time. But in terms of airflow, direction, I can feel kind of a gap in the center of the fan circle where there's not a whole lot of airflow. I do think we're getting a bit of a pinwheel effect as it comes out, but instead of being conical, I feel like it's spiraling. And it's obvious that we've got really good airflow through here. The 2100 RPM, this is full speed right now, is not super crazy. So if you were like the kind of person that's like, I care all about the performance, I don't care about the noise so much, you could definitely get away with this. And through all the testing we've done in the past about slowing down the fan speeds, I think if we drop this down to like 1500 RPM, we might pick up maybe 5C on these temperatures that you've seen, obviously showing that we have absolutely no problems with this cooler keeping things cool. So like I said, I like to test AIOs when they're different. I just don't like to retest different Asetek rebrands of AIOs because they're all gonna perform like an Asetek. All 360s are gonna perform similar, all 240s and 280s are gonna perform similar. This seems like a nice compact design. I like the sleeve tubes. They're not ugly. The radiator is a standard 30 mil thick. It's gonna fit in any case that can fit a standard 360 millimeter radiator. And it's funny though. I wonder with this orientation, how many people are gonna tell me this is wrong? Because now that I think about it, I guess the air could be settling up here. That's a whole different video for a different day, I guess. We've already done our too long didn't watch, but I don't hear any gurgling and stuff, and we've always run our AIOs on here with no problem like this. So there you go. If you guys wanna learn more about the G.Skill Anki 360, I will put the description down below. I'll put the link. You guys can go and check it out. Huge thanks to G.Skill for sending this to us. We've taken a look at a lot of their peripherals and other projects in the past, like keyboards and mice. In fact, I still use their mouse quite often, and I've had that one for years. And it's nice to see another option on the market when it comes to AIOs. I'm gonna leave this one on the test bench for a while now because the other thing that we have to test over time, and we'll report back on if anything ever changes or degrades, is the longevity and the pump quality and the pump life. Thanks for watching, guys. Sound off down below what you think about this AIO, or what your go-to AIO is with your CPUs, and what your favorite brand is, so others that are shopping can have some brands to consider. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. It takes something kind of like different and from a brand that's unexpected to bring us an AIO.